You are listening to Hilary Topper on Air.
Welcome to this very special episode of Hilary Topper on Air. Today, we're honored to have Kimber Breaux with us, a true example of resilience and transformation. Kimber is celebrating 30 years of sobriety, a remarkable milestone that showcases her courage and determination. But that's just part of her inspiring story. Kimber is also the co-owner of the renowned Heritage Boots and is now embarking on an exciting business venture. In this episode, we'll take a deep dive into Kimber's personal recovery journey from overcoming the challenges of alcoholism to building a meaningful and fulfilling professional life. She'll share the lessons she learned along the way, how sobriety has shaped her career, and her advice for others navigating a similar path. Whether you're on your own recovery journey, supporting a loved one through theirs, or simply looking for inspiration to make a positive change in your life, this conversation promises to be both heartfelt and empowering. Join us as we hear Kimber's incredible story of strength, growth, and hope. Let's get started. Okay, Kimber, welcome to the show.
Hi, Hilary. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that introduction. It made me very emotional because it is for someone to recognize and to know that it is a journey that in like life is not a destination, to be okay with the journey every step of the way and the just to keep climbing one step at a time and is yeah, it's very emotional for me. Where I'm at today, where I was at 30 years ago, the whole process of getting to this point and being able to actually pass that on to other people to let them know that, you don't go 0 to 60 by going 0 to 60 in this type of thing. It's one mile per hour at a time that you can increase your speed. And it's yeah, it's wonderful. So thank you.
Yeah, no,
I'm blessed.
I appreciate you being on the show and talking about your journey because I know that you will help a lot of people out there. So, can you share with us a little bit about your story, about recovery? What was some of the turning points that led you to realize that you needed help?
Yeah, so I had early on in my life, I'm in my early 20s, I had a successful experience with life. I did, though, my first time I started drinking when I was 14. I stopped at 16. I suffered from some eating disorders. I started again drinking. I didn't know it was a problem because I wasn't exposed to alcoholism. My knowledge of alcoholism was the homeless, person on the street of Otis from Andy Griffith, that kind of thing. And that didn't resonate with me at that time. So I didn't think I had a problem. And then I had a really successful go of moving to Los Angeles, working for Jane Fonda and Richard Simmons in the fitness industry, and doing my own video. Alcohol played a part in my life, but it wasn't becoming a necessity. But as just time went on, they say with female alcoholics, it progresses quicker than even with males. And by the end of all those successes, I was finding where I would start drinking at, as long as I didn't drink till 5 o'clock and I had my like milestones that I met. I ran this many miles. I didn't have a problem. And then it just got to where everything was gone. I was living on a friend's couch. I didn't know how important a part alcohol played in my life until after I got sober. So for a lot of people wondering if they're an alcoholic, kind of the best way to know if you're an alcoholic is if when you take a drink, you can't guarantee the amount of drinks you could take. You can't stop. You go on a series of sprees. You wake up going, how did that happen? You don't even know because all you did was I was just going to have one drink. And that's kind of the difference. Like there are the hard drinkers that can drink all night long and then go about with their normal life. But alcohol took everything away from me. My family was not was none too pleased. My mom was a codependent. My dad was telling her not to engage with me because his thought was, the tough love, which, I've come to experience as an Al-Anon, having lost my partner to alcoholism. The best thing you can do for an active alcoholic is say no. You can't help them get out of their alcoholism. It is a singular journey with a God or higher power of your understanding. And what I found, the 12 steps, there are a myriad of recoveries, but those things worked for me that could only help me. No one, you could love me too much and you could not love me at all, but neither one had any bearing on why I was an alcoholic. Alcoholism is a genetic thing. It isn't because someone dies or anything. It's because when I drink, I can't control the amount I drink, and I don't know where it's going to take me. So I wound up living in Malibu, though. Yes, I was living on someone's couch, but it was in Malibu. So, and I had been introduced to AA on my 30th birthday, which was January 28th, 1994. And I thought the guy was kind of an idiot, but it did resonate. And then in May, a series of events had happened, and it was one morning after a spree that I said something. I had found a job at a cafe in Malibu that I was working part-time, and I would work the breakfast shift. And this one woman kept coming in. Her name was Judith Schley. What an angel. She just kept coming in to be my customer. And then when I said to her, I said, Judith, I think I have a problem. And she didn't even let me finish. She said, oh, thank God, my friend Lori Dome has been waiting for the go ahead to give you a call. And her friend took me to my first AA meeting the next day. And I cried through the whole meeting. I couldn't even get it out because it's like, it finally made sense. It finally made sense.
Wow.
And it was like the big book told my story without me even having one specific event in my story, except for the fact that I understood the way he drank. I understood that he didn't understand the problem. Once I understood the problem and he had a solution, that if he worked it on a daily basis, that he was able to stay sober. And it says, through the certain trials and low spots. So it does, what I loved about it is it didn't promise me that I was going to have a life beyond my wildest dreams. It promised me that I could find peace in the most difficult times of my life. And it was amazing. It was an amazing journey. The people that were in that first meeting had been people, you talk about how the world sends you signs and angels. Like, they were people who had been talking to me, people who had left their cards on the table where I was working at the restaurant. People just said hi. This one girl that just tried kind of follow me around at night, make sure I got home safe, and all of them were in that meeting. And it
Wow.
just was like, I said my name, I said, I'm Kimber, and I'm an alcoholic, and it's just still it was so freeing and so healing. And the journey just began there. There were many more turning points in other avenues with eating disorders and Al-Anonisms and all the addictive things that you can find you go to when you're trying to arrange life to suit yourself again.
When you're so young and you realize that you have a problem, knowing now of all the things that could happen to you 30 years later, right? Like all these things, because there's so many, I mean, life is just a series of curveballs.
Yes.
And so, how do you get through that without turning back?
Well, so I mean, gosh, I used to think I had the answer, and then Chris died from alcoholism. I used to think like I knew the direct answer. And I think what keeps me and a lot of alcoholics working the steps of AA that have chosen AA as their path is that we don't exactly know. But what I do know, for me, to my core, surrendering to the fact that I knew I was an alcoholic. And every morning I wake up and I confirm that I'm an alcoholic, that I cannot safely use alcohol in any form or factor. That's the foundation of it, is the recognition. And then the other thing is making sure that once you have this gift of sobriety, the biggest thing is passing it on.
Yeah.
The steps give you to a point where you have a spiritual experience significant enough to pay it forward. Because the problem with alcoholics is we're selfish and self-centered to our core. That is the root of the alcoholic. And selfishness can, being all about self, can come in really interesting forms. It can be self-pity. It's like, oh, someone died and you start feeling sorry for yourself. And where the luxury of normal people can go there a little bit, alcoholics have to be careful, because the personality type of the alcoholic grabs onto that and can use that as an excuse, because alcoholism really wants us to drink, you know. And so it will find your mental blank spots, your spiritual weaknesses. So if you go to, like, when Chris died, like, it was the worst broken heart I'd ever felt. I'm blessed that I still have both my parents, but what I did know at that point, what was interesting at the memorial service, all these sober people were there. And it was like the strongest AA meeting I'd ever been to, because everyone talked about when Chris was sober and the gifts of sobriety, and how, instead of focusing on the fact that he died drunk, we focused on the fact that he lived sober. And so I think what the thing is there is no security and no one answer, but I do know, like, if I work the steps, because every day, upon awakening, you look at your day, you review your day, it tells us, and then you say, God, or whatever you believe in, this is my plans. And then you divorce it. You could please take me out of that equation. And if you could take me out of the equation, then I have a better chance. And at the end of the day, I review it, and I'm not perfect. So I review situations. I create sane and sound ideals. I ask God to bring me towards them. I try to just keep it's not I keep my side of the road clean, but I keep my channel open, because I do believe my higher power does not want me drunk. So if I do everything I can, try to tell people I'm sorry when I mess up, because I've got a quick temper, much better since I've been sober, work on that daily to improve. I have a sane and sound ideal. Not always I don't always do the right thing. And if I'm at a grocery store and snippy to someone, I will try and find my way back to that person and say, you know what, I'm really sorry, because I'm trying to keep my channel open. The
Yeah.
one thing I know is I don't have a chance if I take a drink again.
Wow. You know what's interesting? I'm reading a book now about the Blue Sisters. I don't know if you've read it.
No, but I'd love
And
to hear about it.
it's about four sisters, and three of them are alcoholics. One ends up dying from a drug overdose, and they're trying to get through this.
Yes.
And it turns out that the father was also an alcoholic. Is it something, alcoholism, is it something that you see from your experience running in families?
From my experience, yes, I'm adopted, so I don't know of that to be true in mine, but my experience is yes. It is, there's a genetic component to it. I do see that it can pass on. It doesn't pass on to everybody, but it is a family disease. It does pass down. There are genetics that do in your coding that does come with it. I have a lot of friends who who have a parent that was alcoholic, or an aunt or uncle. So yes, I do believe it just runs in the genetics. So I believe you're born with it. I can see behaviors when I was a kid. My reactions to life, to problems and stuff, were very different from my brother, who's not alcoholic. He's adopted. We're not the same bloodline. But it would be like, at that time they called me a strong-willed child.
Mhm.
And what's interesting is when you get to the third step, it's about turning your will and your life over to something greater than yourself. So what they labeled as strong-willed, I see it now. It lines up with alcoholism. So I was
Yeah.
destined from the first time I started drinking to
Wow.
become a full-fledged alcoholic. Now, what's amazing is that there are a lot of people getting sober before they ever take a drink at young ages, because they know they can recognize the personality type. They have recovery centers specifically, and schools set up specifically,
That's great.
directed
Mhm.
towards people that are probably prone to alcoholism, drug addiction, anything like that, so they can get them on the path and the knowledge of how to handle things without using a substance before they ever have to take a drink. And it's great, because I'm gonna get emotional, because in the big book, they say, we hope that none of you have to go to the depths that we had to. And to know that people now don't even have to go, because I don't feel like I had the rock bottom that some people do. But to know that someone doesn't even have, like, that doesn't even have to lose the 15 years that I lost drinking
Yeah.
of productivity, that they can be their full self for their entire existence, is to me just profound and a life altering and a game changer in the world.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your story. I want to switch gears now
Okay.
because you are such an amazing person, and I admire you so much. So as everyone knows, I think on the internet, Heritage Boots are my favorite boot company, and everybody knows
Better
that
than well, thank you.
I'm a huge cowboy boot girl. So can you talk to us just a little bit about Heritage Boots, like how the business got started, and also, with the high pressure of this, getting back to the sobriety, is it difficult to keep sober during some of these challenges that you have as a business owner?
You know what's funny is I think the store and the atmosphere of people coming in with opportunities to be of service to every human that walks in helps me in the most stressful of times, because there's always someone walking through that door that needs me to be a light in some form or fashion. And they may not need me to be a sober light, just a light. Everybody wants to be recognized in their day. It's the cheers. Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. And I try to remember at least customers' faces, if not their name and their boot size. And that's how it gives me the opportunity to be of service to other people. So I think the store provides me an invaluable resource to make it through those hard times. Yes, it provides me the stress and the conflict and stuff that comes with owning a business and business partners and everything, just in relationships, employees. And I says, but it also provides me with the answer. I think
Mm,
that's how the universe works. I mean,
I love that.
the founder of Heritage Boot, Jerry, Patty Ryan, were sober for years, and now Jerry's sober again, and it was interesting because that was a whole journey to accept that this was what I was gonna do. Because at the time I was just selling boots and I had taken a huge hit, in the thing and financially and everything. But for some reason, my spiritual connection directed me here. And because I thought I want to learn to work with leather. And I came in and said, I'd love to learn to make cowboy boots. He said, I'll make them, but I need a salesperson. And then when he decided to sell it and I was in the proper space, because sobriety has taught me how to be sober with money. Sobriety exists all across the board. And I was in the proper place to become a partner. And yeah, so my journey, it's funny, I don't have any plans. And then when they come to me, and I just keep following them until there's the path of least resistance
Right.
really worked for me. Because I'm not gonna say things have fallen in my lap, because I've worked very hard. Like, yes, he asked me to be a salesperson, and I became the best salesperson. Like, every day, that was I had never been that, but I became the best salesperson.
Oh,
And
I could definitely see that.
right, but it wasn't because what's interesting is I give this to the program because it wasn't because I was trying to sell boots. It's because I genuinely learned to care about the people walking through that door.
Yeah. And
And I
you
wanted
feel
to
it.
know about them. Because
You feel
believe it
it.
or not, if I could give all these boots away for free and still live, that's probably what I would do. Because
Mm.
people have saved my life. Just people in general have saved my life, just by their existence, by their warmth, by the fact that they even recognize that I'm here. Because that was the thing. Like, when Chris died, I felt like at the end, nobody was even recognizing that he was alive, because he had become a non-entity. He was homeless. And so yeah, so I think this is the boot store has saved my life, and the path of least resistance has worked to build it towards where it is. So it's a great resource for me, and I do not let it ever turn into a burden.
So let's even shift it a little bit further. So now you're starting a new company, which I'm
Yes.
really excited about.
I
Can you
know, and this has been a
share?
long time. It's funny because I don't move quick, but the idea came to me, several years ago, and I was thinking, because I don't ever find, pajamas that I like to wear. I'm more of a tomboy, so I like the more loungewear looking pajamas. I like the silks and the cottons. And I love Western wear. And I really thought with all the context that I was making that I was going to go into Western wear, shirts and stuff. But the market is very flooded with that. And I thought a lot of people now are taking loungewear out onto the street. And
They are.
why not make a Western influenced loungewear? And this name came to me because I remember this movie I saw called Strictly Ballroom, long time ago, Australian film. And the final scene, they're all dancing to the song Love is in the Air. And
Mhm.
it's such a moment. I went to see that movie 15 times. I was new in sobriety. It was like, it was so made me feel good at the end. It was at the Samuel Goldwyn Theater. And then, so the initials for that is Liita, which is Lita. And I pictured that with a lasso and everything. So that's where the name came from. And a crude heart being the, because I love hearts, a crude heart being the symbol of it, the embroidered symbol that'll be in it. And I thought, so Western inspired loungewear. And then I thought, well, how could it make it different and not be knocked off? And I said, you find Western artists to create the designs to go on the fabrics. And then some friends of mine came into the boot store and their daughter's in fashion school in New York and she wants to do sleepwear. Yeah. And she designed patterns. And that's when I said, okay, I think it might be time. And so we're moving slow, but we're having patterns made and designs drawn up. I've got a pattern maker and she made our first sample, just white, plain, so that we can work on the design itself. And I've got 2 artists that are signed on to do some designs, work with us on what's going to be on the fabrics, and it's moving slow. But I'm hoping by next year at this time, we'll maybe do a podcast and I'll be able to have
Share.
talk about the launch of it, the website and everything. So I'm really excited because also a unique thing happened. A high school friend reunited with me by coming into the store, and her husband I graduated from high school with. She's in rehab now. And her and her husband have the resources and want to do this as well. So that's what I said. It's just really, it's organically growing, and that's why I do believe it's going to happen. And we're going to partner with a foundation that I discovered, the Selfless Love Foundation, through Ashley Brown. I used to work for John Paul DeJoria, who founded Patron Tequila. His partner was her husband, and she is the Selfless Love Foundation, where they help finance people in foster system when they outgrow the foster system, and also helps find homes and fund, I know. So we're going to combine it, and their symbol is a crudely shaped heart. So we're going to jointly, like, that's going to be a portion of all the proceeds from Lita will go to the Selfless Love Foundation. So that's what we're looking, that's it. That's where the
That's
idea is going.
incredible.
Yeah,
I
I'm pretty
love it.
excited. So keeping the Western thing, I was born in cowgirl world. I've had little statues of horses and rode had horses and boots my whole life. It's country music was what I raised with. If you watch me listen to a Dwight Yoakam song, you can see that I'm being moved in a way. And it's kind of funny because my friend took me to the opera and it's spectacular, but I thought this is not my art form. And then you take me to a Willie Nelson, a Dwight Yoakam, and I'm just like, I look like I'm in my bliss, and I had to come to terms with that because it felt so unsophisticated. And yet it was, it's who I am to my core. And I'm so grateful I know that. I'm so grateful I know that.
I love that. So we're thinking now that the business will hopefully be launched next year.
If we can
And
make it at Christmas, I would love it, but I think that's pushing it.
yeah. And also just looking back on your recovery and your career, is there one moment or accomplishment that stands out as a symbol of how far you've come?
Okay, so sorry, it's emotional. So I always wanted to sing and write music, right? And in sobriety, I got to write music, but the songs that God gave to me were children's songs, country music for kids. And so was fortunate enough to record 2 CDs. We got to go on tour. We played at, large festivals.
Wow.
And we're at the CMA festival. And my brother had a son that died young, and he died of Down syndrome.
Mm.
There was this little Down syndrome kid standing right in front of the stage and was doing this like picked me up. And I I walked off the stage and went and picked her up and brought her up to sing while I was holding her. And I couldn't say a word. And I looked at my band and they knew right then. They picked it up. And her and I just held her and danced with her during the song. And it was full circle.
That is full circle. Wow.
As I was like, because it's funny. And my dad took me aside and said, because I didn't make a lot of money doing children's music and I didn't become some super famous star. And I really thought I needed that to be okay for so long. And my dad took me aside. My dad was a principal and he's still alive, and pray for him. He is in the hospital right now, but he's doing good. But he said, I could not be more proud of your accomplishments. And he said, it has nothing to do with money. He said, he said, I knew you wouldn't be a school teacher or a principal like me. He said, you had a different personality. He said, but this, and your songs are so uplifting for these children. And he said, I could not be more proud of you.
That's just beautiful. That is, wow.
I know, right?
I mean, you've accomplished so much in your career and in your personal life, and you're so inspiring. And I just really want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, sharing your story. I know this will help so many people out there. Could you give us more information on how people can get in touch with you, can buy boots at Heritage Boots, can potentially be on your mailing list of the new company?
Well, absolutely. So, you can always reach out to me to kimber@heritageboot.com. That is the best email to reach me at. So that's a good one. If you need resources in recovery, I'm not afraid to give y'all my phone number, Hillary. If you think that's a good idea, I can let people.
Sure, why
My
not?
Yeah, my phone number is 310-291-5982. And I mean, just reach out to me there. If you're in recovery, if you have questions about recovery, if you have questions about boots, I feel fortunate to have lots of people in my life, but I always welcome new ones. I just discovered who my natural father was, and I have this whole family I didn't know about that have opened their arms to me, which is also a moving and
Amazing.
heavy in a good way experience. So I just welcome. I want a big life, and I get a chance to have it. I didn't have kids. I'm not married, but my big life is people. So please, y'all reach out to me. I'm a great resource. And I just want to hear everybody's story. I used to be a storyteller with my songs, and I love stories. I need to hear people's stories that it moves me. And it also gives me faith in humans.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Hillary. I adore you. This is like so moving, this whole experience. Thank you.
I want to take a moment to thank my incredible sponsors who make this podcast possible. First, a huge thank you to the Russo Law Group, Long Island Signature, Estate Planning, Elder Law, and Special Needs Law Firm. Their expertise and dedication are unmatched. For more information about their services, visit their website at vjrussolaw.com. Next, a big shout out to Play Try. Whether you're into swimming, biking, running, or all three, Play Try has everything you need to excel. Thinking of joining the business world? They also offer franchise opportunities. Visit playtry.com to explore or make a purchase. And finally, I have to give some love to Vimazzi, the shoes I personally rely on, both for training and racing. These are a game changer for athletes. Check out their website at Vimazzi, that's VIMAZI.com for more information. And don't forget, a special discount code is available on atriathletesdiary.com. That's my blog. And if you go to atriathletesdiary.com/discounts, you'll see a whole host of discounts, including Vimazzi shoes. Thank you, sponsors, for your support. You're helping us bring this podcast to life and keep the community thriving.